In the world that was invented, there was a continent full of magic and martial arts, and there was a war there, which was called the War of Self-Destruction. In this world, there were undead everywhere. Brave souls have learned to improve their martial arts. One of the brave souls was very strong and had abilities that the others did not have. Her name was Shu Baos. She sacrificed her soul in the name of the light and summoned something. To fight the growing undead and demons, she ordered a certain creature to save the fates of all the living and resist the chaos of this world. When he was summoned, some creature appeared in this world. Back to current events, a certain girl was yelling at a guy asking if he would take off his clothes. Even the crows were frightened by her screams and flew away in fear. The guy was incredibly embarrassed and he asked Ariana to stop. The impudent girl pressed him against the wall and asked him to undress. From the fact that the guy was inactive, she understood that he was not going to undress. If he did not do this, then she would undress. The hero persistently shouted for her to take her hands off her clothes and not undress. The guy's requests were not heard, and the girl took off all her clothes. She felt uncomfortable, but desire took over her. Silently taking off her clothes, she did not say a word. The hero was embarrassed to even look at the naked girl, and he became embarrassed. Ariana screamed madly. Either he would immediately take off his clothes, or she would tear them off him herself. His confusion only increased because he had no previous experience of intimacy. The girl remained unshakable because only 5 minutes had passed since she came of age, and 3 years ago she had already decided to marry this guy. The guy suspected that Ariana had staged a deception to force him to come here, and he invited her to go to his room. Hiding behind the remains of her clothes, Ariana stated that the book said it should be here. This happened in a rather unusual place because they were at the very top, on top of a huge dragon statue. The naked woman opened the book and found the information she needed, then showed it to the guy. It was said there that the sources of magic are connected with the spiritual power of the magician Kun, and to strengthen magic, it is necessary to increase one's Kun, which is achieved thanks to the high concentration of Kun. And the closer a person is to nature, the closer to the source of magic, and the more one can increase one's Kun. And these words were written by Professor Hager. The naive girl pointed out that the book said that in order to increase Kun, it was necessary to combine various forms. But the guy immediately realized that her father probably brought this book in order to molest girls. The woman was shocked, as she did not even imagine that this could be true. Her father, a great magician and priest, was considered the wisest man, and the guy also realized that her father was extremely lustful. The girl was still confused and asked Leo if he knew that she was related to the Dragon Clan. Her mother was the daughter of the leader of the Dragon Clan, and her father became the partner of a huge dragon, overcame the highest barrier, and became a saint. Leo agreed with Ariana that his affairs were his problem, and he thanked her for her concern. But the girl had worries. She couldn't understand how they could call him that. Everything they said was true. The guy admitted that he was a failure. Despite 10 years at the academy, he was still unable to absorb the magic stone. He was also unable to awaken his Kun. The girl's persistence was limitless, and she realized that this could not continue. If he listened to her, they could wake him up today, and she was sure of it. The not-so-lucky guy asked Ariana to stop, and she herself understood that nothing would work out because she was the daughter of a great magician and a dragon, and she needed to think about her honor. But Leo was also the son of Count Lofus, and the girl could not understand why he was treated like this, while she intended to open the eyes of everyone. Out of gratitude, Leo immediately hugged Ariana and pressed himself against her. And after that, he asked her to calm down. The girl felt extremely awkward because she was completely naked and he was so close. She began to cry and ask if everything would be okay, because this was the first time for her, while he pulled her close to him and they continued to hug. Suddenly, the clothes that were covering the girl fell off. Leo began to get even more nervous and extremely uncomfortable. The guy timidly said the girl's name, calling her. And suddenly, he asked her if he could change his mind. The girl was furious and shouted to the whole city that this would not happen and he could not change his mind. After a moment, she changed her clothes but still remained next to the guy. She stood next to him in love and dreamed of intimacy. Leo was a little upset because, after all, he missed his chance. Ariana came even closer to him and pressed her chest against him. She then whispered in his ear, asking if he really wanted this. Ariana's room tonight. The fumes flowed down the guy's face even more actively, and he didn't know what to answer the girl. Despite everything that was said, she immediately left as if nothing had happened. After all, she needed to return the book so that Flossus would not notice. Looking lovingly at the guy, she said goodbye to him. Caring Leo asked her to remember to buy a mug of bear beer so that even if someone notices, it won't cause problems. And Ariana was so caring, but still always in a hurry to get somewhere. Suddenly, some guy standing on the balcony heard Leo's screams. He asked Ariana to come back because he couldn't fly. The witty guy immediately realized who was on top of the monument. Someone behind the blonde said that this loser had not even mastered the levitation technique, and it was just a shame for the Lofus family, and the blue-eyed guy believed that Leo would remain a loser. But the blue-eyed blonde understood that Leo was a person who was able to run around the entire Sacred Spirit Magic Academy for 6 years, so he did not consider him a failure. The guy with blue hair continued to consider Leo a failure because, in his opinion, mages did not get stronger from running. The blonde believed that Professor Hager was simply afraid that Leo would take it all too seriously, and that's why he told him that nonsense. However, all their words were lies, since in these 6 years he had not improved his abilities, and then he asked the guy with blue hair if he had prepared everything. The troll in the guy's hands had already reached 2 stars, and Leo, unable to create even the most primitive magic shield without harming anyone, was no match for him. In fact, it wasn't his fault that Ariana liked Leo. The blue-eyed guy noticed that Will's brotherly feelings began to awaken, and he showed weakness. In fact, he was a competitor for the heir position, and Will understood this and did not consider him his brother. Smirking evilly, he considered him just a bastard, not worthy of his respect. At this time, Leo tried to remove Ariana's clothes, which she left on the statue. After several attempts, the guy finally managed to take off his clothes, and he began to chase after her. And so, she found herself in his hands. It took him a lot of effort, and he was already tired. The guy was preparing to descend and realized that descending by air would be much better, but he had no choice but to descend on his own. Suddenly, he saw something amazing. It was like a huge portal that appeared right next to him, and his evil brother was behind it. Using a magic spell, Will brought it about. A certain figure began to emerge from the portal. First, he showed his hand, but then it became clear that it was a giant troll who was going to kill the guy. The surprised guy quickly began to look around and look for guards who could protect him, because he could not understand how a 2-star monster could sneak into the academy. With a deafening roar, the monster stepped on the monument. It had an incredibly thick hide and high physical durability, making it an easy opponent for a mage. But damn it, Leo wasn't a magician. Suddenly, a huge fireball came out of nowhere. It crashed into the academy tower not far from Leo. The ogre and the guy were incredibly surprised because they saw fire magic. The hero guessed who could be behind this and immediately turned in the direction from which the blow was struck. Leo realized that it was Rob and shouted at him at the top of his voice that he was a traitor. Rob just looked at him, smiled, and prepared for the next attack. Meanwhile, the ogre prepared to attack Leo, his gaze directed straight at his target. The guy began to get even more nervous. because the situation was becoming more and more interesting. Meanwhile, the hooligans who wished him harm watched and laughed. This all happened because an entry-level mage was able to banish a one-eyed troll with ease, and the fact that this guy was hiding was just ridiculous. A gloating Rob laughed and said to let Leo still give him a helping hand. After that, he began to take out his magic wand. The magic wand was also covered in fire, and with its help, Rob was becoming more stronger. Suddenly, the stone in Will's hands was destroyed using fire magic. Will immediately started shouting that Rob had gone crazy because he had broken the teleportation stone, and now it was impossible to send the troll back. The evil blonde began to laugh because in order to simply intimidate him, he would not drive away the guards. The brother immediately realized that Rob was planning an assassination attempt on the aristocrat, and this was a serious crime. The impudent man patted Will on the shoulder and told him that he himself said that Leo was just a bastard. And he advised me to forget about him and better go have a drink. After he fast gone, as he left, the impudent man turned and told Will that it was he who destroyed the teleportation stone, so he knew what to do. The impudent man finally left, and Will looked at what was happening and did not know what to do. At this time, the ogre continued to deliver his furious attacks. With great effort, Leo tried to evade them. After another powerful attack, the guy realized that it was better not to joke with the enemy. When he fully realized the situation, he suddenly rushed forward. The enemy was not inferior to him in speed and pursued him. Another attack using fire magic came, aimed directly at the guy. With flexibility, the guy dodged again and continued running. The ogre was surprised by the dexterity of his opponent, not expecting this from a simple guy. He began to be indignant that the dirty ogre pestered him. The bald blue ogre continued to attack the guy and quickly pounced on him. After some time, they approached the fountain. The giant ogre struggled with his fatigue, finding it incredibly difficult to run due to his weight. Leo realized that he was lucky that he had been training and running for a long time. Otherwise, he would not have been able to escape from him. The enraged ogre let out a frantic scream that echoed throughout the academy. It seemed that the ogre had a second wind, and he continued the pursuit with even greater persistence. The guy realized that the situation was getting worse, and it was not so easy for him to hide. Suddenly followed powerful jump. The ogre flew quite high into the air, preparing to attack. He was going to crush Leo to pieces with his giant club. The hero was gripped by horror. He understood that he was now in danger. The enemy turned out to be clumsy and only scratched Leo on the arm, tearing his clothes. The ogre even more, and with unrelenting fury he continued the pursuit. Reaching out his giant blue hand, he sought to grab the hero. Leo assessed the situation and thought about his next actions. He turned and met the gaze of the ogre opposite. Then he quickened his pace and continued running even faster. The enemy turned out to be incredibly slow and missed with a giant hand, failing to touch the guy. Leo, using his skills, was able to maneuver between the huge fingers of the ogre. Not missing the moment when he was in the distance, Leo ordered the ogre to stop. Making a dash, he began to attack with physical force, using a kick. The ogre was absolutely indifferent to this attack. He did not even feel it. With the help of his powerful tail, he was going to demonstrate his true strength to the guy. And the next moment, he forcefully threw the insolent young man into the high air, who dared to disturb the peace of the ogre. The young man collided with the statue and cried out in pain. After the blow, he collapsed to the ground and again cried out in acute pain. The blue ogre relentlessly pursued his prey. The monster pursued the guy with even greater zeal because he was already a little wounded. Leo was aware that his end might be near because without using his magic and relying only on his physical abilities, he was no match for a level 2 monster. After a few seconds, someone started using magic. The magical impulse went straight to the ogre, beginning to affect him. Using their magical abilities, someone surrounded the ogre with a magical barrier. In an instant, the ogre, like a grumbler, began to spin in a whirlwind, emitting cries of incomprehension of what was happening. The magician turned out to be an elderly man with a staff in his hands. He slowly approached the ogre, making an epic impression. A serious man walked towards Leo, his expression determined. The guy immediately recognized him, and it was the director of the academy. With a single gesture, the director made the ogre suffer unbearable pain. Using his magical abilities, he created a seal in which he locked the monster. After that, he instantly teleported the ogre back to his world. The director looked at Leo, as if unable to find the right words, realizing that the guy was wounded and on the verge of death. The older man simply looked at him and sighed heavily. Leo looked at the director and apologized for his failures, disappointing him. The director informed Leo that in 5 years at the academy, he had not been able to awaken either his kun or absorb the magic stone, and asked if it was time to give up. Leo looked at the director with encouragement and expressed his desire to try again. The director looked straight into the eyes of the persistent guy. He also noticed the wounds on his body and realized how difficult it was for him in this academy, where nothing worked. Leo continued to keep his gaze on the man and looked him straight in the eyes. The wise director walked up to Leo and put a comforting hand on his shoulder. He then advised him to first heal his wounds and then resume his studies. Turning around, he saw the destroyed statue. Using his magical abilities, the man began to lift huge pieces of the statue. Following his abilities, he began to repair the huge statue. The pieces of the statue's arms slowly began to come together, and then they connected as if nothing had happened. Leo looked at it and was completely delighted, as it was incredibly cool. When the wise man left, the guy turned to him. His treatment was due to a severe hand injury. The wound began to become inflamed and required immediate treatment and hospitalization. Sometime later, events unfolded in the Kyber Magic Academy in the library. Someone in the library was discussing the hero. And read book? It was Ariana, sitting on the floor and studying literature, while asking the stranger if Leo had read all the books in this library. This stranger turned out to be a girl who said that the hero has been reading one book every day for 5 years, but he does not have magical powers. However, there was no other person on the Eurasian continent who knew the theory better. The one who said this was Flossus. Ariana claimed that it was only a matter of time before his kun awakened, and she had already found a way to do it, and all she needed was this. Suddenly, the girl hesitated, realizing that she should not reveal all the details. Flossus looked at her in surprise and asked what was the matter. The girl still felt awkward, but said that it was okay, and his weaving technique had reached the 2nd level, and she was asking if she should continue training. Ariana inherited wind magic from her father and fire magic from her mother, and the weaving technique will help her better control wind and fire, which goes perfectly with her fighting skills. Of course, she must continue to improve this technique. However, Ariana would like to choose a fighting technique that she could practice with Leo. After all, they could be together, and the girl wanted to always be near him. At this time, the question was asked, "What about training with me?" This question was asked by the wounded Leo, who entered the library, and Ariana immediately rushed into his arms. The guy stood motionless, and the girl noticed that he was badly injured. As she got closer, she immediately wanted to examine his wounds, as she was very worried about Leo. There were marks from the monster's claws and burns from fire magic on his body, and Ariana immediately realized that this was the work of Rob and Will. She was furious and was going to find them. Ariana screamed with rage that they were fucking annoying her and she wanted revenge. Suddenly, Leo took her hand and stopped her. The girl cried and wanted to help her lover and avenge him. The wise Flossus, meanwhile, watched what was happening and asked Leo to show his wounds. She approached and began to examine the scars that the huge monster left. The woman immediately understood what was happening and who could have left such marks. Ariana couldn't look at it calmly and asked what was the matter. Flossus said that these were just external injuries, after which she asked the girl to bring healing water from the closet behind. As soon as the healing water began to act, the wound was isolated with a bandage and the bleeding stopped. The bandage was tied tightly and the wound should soon heal. The guy screamed in pain as the woman bandaged his arm quite tightly. Caring Ariana immediately noticed that her lover was in pain. She suggested using wind magic and blowing, as then it wouldn't be so painful. Carefully, she began to blow on the wound, moving very close to it. Leo felt awkward, but still admitted that the wound still hurt. Ariana looked at him tenderly and realized that the wind magic had not had the desired effect. So they decided to try another magical effect. Ariana thought that a flaming kiss might help and began to move closer to Leo to help him heal faster. Leo felt extremely awkward and even shouted in embarrassment. Leo avoided the kiss so stubbornly that the books around them flew apart and floated in the air. Flossus watched what was happening and told the lovers that there were recently found books, unique copies, and their actions ruined everything, and she warned that the director would not appreciate such a mess. Leo, confused and amazed by what he heard, made an important remark to himself. He realized that among these books there were those that he had not yet read. Books were scattered in the crevices between the cabinets and covered with dust, and some of them were almost completely eaten away by insects. Leo was in a stupor. He was overcome by an instant desire to read these books. Looking at one of them, he noticed a very unusual cover. And I immediately realized that this was probably a book on black magic. The attentive Flossus immediately noticed what kind of book they found. And she said that they couldn't read it, and then asked to give it back. The guy was even more surprised and asked why he needed to give the book. Once upon a time, black and white magicians rallied together. They fought together against the forces of evil. But then something happened, and now this book is banned. It is better not to deal with black magic, because it is taboo. Leo realized that this was evil magic, and he was overcome by memories of the past. He remembered sitting in front of people who scolded him. They shouted that he was a bastard and a little monster. The guy then sat motionless and listened to all these terrible words. Also, they called him a degenerate of black magicians and wanted to get rid of him. The hero cried furiously from his difficult fate because they wanted to get rid of him. Returning to the events in the library, Leo continued to look at the book and wondered what he should do next. Ariana was surprised because she did not understand why he reacted this way to black magic. The guy was overcome by a strange feeling when he held the book in his hands, as if he felt the power he possessed. Leo touched the pentagram painted on the cover of the book. Suddenly, it glowed a bright acid green, as if signaling that a black magician had found it. Leo felt the realization hit him, and immediately he felt a flood of ideas flow through him. He quickly began to reach for the book, wanting to study it from beginning to end. The magical powers he felt from this book were unparalleled, as he had never experienced anything like it before. Ariana screamed, trying to dissuade Leo from reading this book and throwing it to the ground. The frantic desire to control magic with the help of this book was irresistible, and he could not resist. Opening the book, Leo peered into its contents with incredible interest, trying to understand the secrets it hid. Flossus, realizing that this could be dangerous, used her magical abilities. She got rid of the book, pulling it away from Leo with her own magic. Silently, she took the book in her hands, realizing that it could be extremely dangerous. The guy could not calm down and asked Flossus to let him look at the book. The girl was unshakable and did not want to allow him anything that was forbidden to absolutely everyone. She picked up the book and began to hide it as far as possible, trying to protect everyone from her dark forces. With a slight movement of her hand, the girl indicated where the book should be placed. At the same moment, the book itself moved to the indicated place. After what happened, the guy decided to leave the library and open the door. The ladies followed him, but he noticed that he was wounded and he had better lie down quickly. Flossus immediately said goodbye to him, looking him straight in the eyes. Ariana was excited and ran with Leo to follow him. The wise Flossus immediately stopped her and insisted that she stay and continue to practice controlling the magical whip. The lady in love continued to watch Leo through a small crack in the door, and she was unhappy because she had to stay in the library. Flossus closed the door in her face, insisting on teaching her. The hero looked through the glass in the door, but could not see any of the girls. In sad thoughts, he began to wander around the academy's courtyard. He was incredibly sad as he felt lonely and abandoned. Suddenly, a bright flash of light appeared behind him, and someone said his name. A huge fireball flew towards the guy, gradually approaching him. He was already incredibly close, and the guy felt the heat from the flame, which did not go out. Leo managed to dodge, but he still didn't understand what was happening. When he turned his head, he saw a familiar character. It was Rob. Rob continued to use his magical powers and made an attempt on Leo's life. In response to the situation, the villain only laughed. Leo turned to him and said that 3 years had passed and the same thing was happening, and asked if he was tired of it. Rob was fine with it and enjoyed preying on the weak Leo. The guy sighed heavily, realizing the helplessness of the situation. Realizing everything, the hero turned and wished Rob luck. Cunning Rob got angry at the guy's reaction and asked him not to think that he couldn't do anything because of Ariana's protection, and no man should hide behind a girl. The hero continued to go his way, but turning around briefly, he said that there was nothing special about it. But anyway, it was he who liked Ariana and not Rob because she hated him. The flame in the villain's eyes flared up even stronger, and his rage only increased. He began to use his magical powers to harm Leo. An atmosphere of fire hovered around them, and the hero turned to the villain, once again reminding him that it was forbidden at the academy to attack other students using magic. Rob didn't care. He wanted to hurt Leo and destroy him. His rage consumed him, and he sought to do everything possible to deal a significant blow to Leo. Gathering all his strength into one blow, he used fire magic, and the attack quickly approached Leo. Perspiration began to flow down the face of the hero with even greater speed, who was filled with anxiety and worry, since he did not understand what to do in this situation, since he did not have magical abilities for protection. The fireball was right in front of him, and he realized that this could be the end of his life. After touching the fire, a bright flash shone around him. Before the blow, the guy closed his eyes so as not to see anything. When he opened them, he discovered something amazing. He found himself in a completely different place and did not know where he was. Looking around, he realized that he had never seen this place before. Suddenly, he noticed a strange and incredibly beautiful girl approaching him. She hovered above the ground and moved closer and closer to Leo. As soon as she approached, she sat down on a tree and greeted the guy, declaring that the owner had finally arrived. Leo immediately began asking questions. He asked where she was and who she was. The girl, with an unusual look, replied that they were in the forest of black magic. She, in turn, was the guardian of his skills. This confused the guy even more, and he did not understand what the forest of black magic was and how it ended up here. The lady thought about it and let the guy know that he would soon find out everything. That was the main thing for her, that he had already activated the long-sealed power that had always resided within him. Suddenly, a notification appeared in front of the guy that he had never seen before. It stated that his magical power was currently 0, his physical strength was 173, and his wealth was 17. The unusual lady also added that his kun had been sealed for a long time, and although he had awakened it, he would have to start cultivating it from scratch. And as for his physical strength, he had been running all year round, so he had reached the second stage. Wealth is a supply of magical cores, and now that he has activated them, they will turn into magical power. The hero looked at his hands and suddenly realized that he was now able to practice magic. The lady warned him that first he needed to raise his magical power to the first stage, and after that he would be able to cultivate it, and she would teach him the technique of internal breathing, and he would train every day, and in a month he would reach this stage. Leo suddenly became indignant because a whole month was too long for him, and he asked if it was possible to speed up the process. He explained that the academy holds tests at the end of the year, and if he fails, he will be expelled. The girl apologized and explained that without her internal breathing methods, it would usually take an ordinary person a whole year to reach the first stage, but he wanted to achieve it faster. There was only one way to speed up the learning process than in a month. The guy was interested in this and wanted to know how this was possible. The lady explained that this was only possible if he found a partner to cultivate together, and if yin and yang united, the effectiveness would increase. Leo was very confused and realized that dual cultivation was something he had never even thought about since he was still just a child. The girl didn't understand why he had such an embarrassed expression on his face, because it was just ordinary cultivation. Suddenly, the lady took her staff and wanted to show the guy something. Magic surrounded her and she sparkled with a green bright light. She then pointed her staff directly at Leo and used her magic. The hero did not expect that the girl had such incredible abilities. After some time, the girl stopped using magic on Leo. Smiling, she said that she taught him the technique of paired cultivation. From this moment, he can begin his path of improvement. In the blink of an eye, the guy moved. The girl did everything she wanted for Leo. The guy returned to the events when Rob attacked him and was about to use his fire abilities. At this moment, 5 fireballs were approaching him, which were incredibly close. The villain just looked at this and grinned, because he longed to harm the hero. Suddenly, Leo extended his hand to use his magic, which he had previously been unable to use. Rob smiled and began to mock Leo's change of expression. The guy at this time was thinking that although the newly awakened Kun was not able to manipulate magic, but he needed to do something to prevent the fireballs from attacking him. When one of the balls came even closer, the hero lost his concentration for a moment. But without losing hope, he continued to try to prevent the attack. Suddenly, a bright blue light appeared around him, which began to protect him from the fireballs. It was water magic, and Leo skillfully distributed it around himself, beginning to use it to protect himself from the attack. Rob started screaming, claiming that it was impossible, and he was clearly nervous and doubtful of the guy's abilities, not believing what had happened. With the help of a water shield, Leo easily repelled the fiery attack and remained invulnerable. The enemy was furious and couldn't understand how Leo did it, given that he didn't have Kun activated. At this time, Leo was thinking that the book said that he was able to passively use magic in case of danger. Eventually, he realized why he needed Kun. Although he knew the spell, he had never been able to successfully use it in a dangerous situation until now. The villain was extremely disappointed as he was planning to destroy the hero. He shouted, calling Leo a bastard, and picked up his staff, preparing to strike even more powerfully. Summoning an attack with his staff, he created an incredibly powerful magic field and used fire to prepare for the attack. This ability was called fire arrows, and they had incredible power. The fired arrow instantly approached the target. The arrow moved closer and closer, almost reaching Leo, who was still standing in the water shield, waiting for the next attack. The fire arrow began to destroy the water barrier created by Leo. After the water barrier was completely destroyed, the fiery arrow slowly approached the hero's body. At this moment, when she came very close, he did not know what to do next, since he had never fought with magic. All of a sudden appeared Ariana. With ease, she used her magical whip and destroyed Rob's attack. The villain was stunned, sweat was running down his face, and it became clear to him that further struggle was useless. Rob was surprised at how quickly Ariana came to Leo's aid. But Rob didn't want to give up and angrily ordered Ariana to get out of the way. The girl instantly came to the guy's defense, using her magic whip. And she asked what would happen if she didn't leave. Rob reminded her of the family betrothal agreement, claiming that sooner or later she would be his wife. But Ariana did not care at all about this agreement, since she did not want to marry anyone other than Leo. The villain was visibly angry and was planning his next move. In response, Ariana stuck her tongue out at him and asked what he was going to do next. Rob didn't want her to tell her father about how he attacked his classmate on the academy grounds. Then she showed him the magic whip and asked if he would like to try it. Rob stood in a daze and could not utter a word. Then, suddenly, he changed his expression as if he was planning something. Laughing, he declared that he was not going to fight his future wife. The girl called him a fool, claiming that he would never become her fiancé. Then she added that a new batch of poison had arrived from Kuma, and he could ask for some to try. Maybe it would help. Rob had no words and just smiled. Ariana grabbed hand Leo. She quickly called him, and they went somewhere together. Rob watched all this and decided that he would do his best to get Leo expelled from the academy. He just needed to wait a little. Sometime later, the couple arrived at the Magic Academy's dormitory. Leo smiled and said that they had already arrived. The girl knew this, but wanted to go with the guy. Suddenly, he stopped her and said that this is a boys' hostel and she can't come here. With kindness in her eyes, she looked at the guy and said that she really wanted to get there. The hero touched her shoulder and approached her. But he was forced to upset her, because if he breaks the rules, he will be fined. The girl understood this and was extremely upset because she really wanted to get into Leo's room. Suddenly, the guy pulled her to him and began to hug her. The lady felt incredibly pleasant and awkward. Leo was incredibly grateful to his savior and stroked her head. After that, in upset feelings, he began to go to his dormitory, and the girl followed him with her gaze. Suddenly, the embarrassed guy turned around and asked if Ariana wanted to go with him. The lady happily agreed that she wanted it very much. The guy admitted that he hadn't even finished his thought yet. A smiling Ariana replied that she was ready for anything with Leo. The young man, it seems, did not expect such an answer from a girl in love. He smiled and promised that tomorrow would be such a case. Ariana also smiled because she was looking forward to tomorrow. After a while, it got dark outside, and Leo sat in his room meditating. Suddenly, the mysterious girl he had seen earlier appeared next to him. She looked at him and explained that the breathing method was divided into 9 levels, where the first level was considered the weakest, and as the level increased, one's spiritual magical power increased. Currently, his spiritual magic power was 0. At the same time, he had 17 coins and a primordial magic core accumulated in his body over the years, which could be converted into magic power through the absorption method. However, the girl realized that not everything was so simple. She asked if they couldn't give out 10 coins per year of school, and how he only accumulated 17 after 5 years of school. The guy closed his eyes and became indignant, saying that he was giving the coins to Ariana. At first, the mysterious girl was surprised. Then she laughed, realizing that the situation had become clear. Leo became agitated and asked her to stop laughing, explaining that everything was very serious. That mysterious lady thought that she was the one he wanted to practice sun and moon pair cultivation with. The guy was embarrassed, but the girl immediately realized that this was really the case. The lady ordered him to start practicing breathing exercises right now and absorbing the magical power he had accumulated over the years. The guy again began meditation and breathing exercises. Evolutionary cultivation is about awakening the energy flows between heaven and earth, which should enter the practitioner's body and cause mutation. And he can easily transform these energy flows into his own energy. However, first, he needs to master basic breathing techniques. Leo realized with embarrassment that things would not be so simple and continued his meditation. After some time of meditation, he felt an unusual force surrounding him. His mind was filled with knowledge that was previously inaccessible to him. The guy's magical power increased to 20 units and his wealth to 12. The surprised lady was amazed and congratulated the guy for mastering the initial stage of Kunya. Leo immediately realized that usually the magic core issued by the school increases the strength by 1 unit, and not always, but now it has increased by 5. The lady laughed cheerfully, realizing that this was all thanks to her method of sun and moon breathing, something that all the cultivators in the world wanted. But the main reason for his success was his unique natural abilities, and thanks to his talent, he was able to overcome physical limitations and, having mastered breathing techniques, become a real cultivator. The guy immediately wondered where he could have such unique natural data. The incredible girl said that this was all. That mysterious girl only said that he inherited all this from his mother. Leo was shocked by this information because he had no idea that this was possible. He got up from the floor and asked the girl if she knew his mother. Suddenly, the girl rose in the air and asked Leo if something like this had ever occurred to him before. Can suddenly awaken in him. The hero thought again, realizing that all this really is not just like that. Suddenly he realized. He remembered the very book with black magic that he opened and began to read. Holding it in his hands, he felt a connection that he had never felt with anything else before. Leo thought that perhaps he was the wizard. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and someone came to Leo. It was also unexpected for the magical girl, but she was ready for it. The young man slowly walked to the door to open it, while the sorceress had already disappeared into her magical portal. By the time he entered the room, the sorceress had already disappeared into thin air. The guy opened the door and suddenly discovered the girl who suddenly burst into the room and pushed him inside. Suddenly, Ariana ran into Leo's arms. The guy was shocked and surprised because he didn't expect to see her here so late. She quickly closed the door with her foot. While the lady was silent, the guy shouted, asking how she got here, because she was forbidden to be here. Ariana pushed the guy right up against the wall and was incredibly persistent. The hero did not understand what was happening, because the girl began to take off his t-shirt. The girl looked into his eyes and said that she wanted to help him. She persistently insisted that she wanted to awaken Kun in him. From surprise, the guy was incredibly dumbfounded. He pushed the girl away and wanted to tell her something. After which, he pressed her against the wall and was a little angry. In a dissatisfied tone, he said that he would stop doing this because they had agreed. Tears flowed down her cheeks. She said that today Rob used magic on him, and if she was late even for a second. She felt great fear for the guy's fate, and that's why she was so worried, trying to help him with Kun. Ariana shook and cried, feeling helpless before the fate of her lover. The guy began to wipe away her tears and assured her not to worry because he had already awakened Kun. Doubting his words, she asked if it was true, continuing to cry. Pushing him away, she exclaimed that he was lying, since nothing had happened between them yet, and the girl could not understand how he awakened his Kun. Leo had no words. He was dumbfounded and didn't know what to tell her. Then, he decided to demonstrate his abilities and used his own magic. Despite the continued tears, the girl still believed him, because she saw everything with her own eyes. Reaching out, she touched his palm and felt his true strength, and she realized that it really was the same Kun. Meanwhile, late at night at the Haiger Academy of Witchcraft and Wizardry, events unfolded in the library. Flossus secretly leafed through a book that described spells related to black magic. It was mentioned that with the help of evil spirits, they improved their cultivation methods, using ancient forbidden techniques, controlled nature, and possessed destructive power far exceeding the power of white magicians. After reading this section, she immediately closed the book. Leaving it on the table, she stood up from her desk. Then she turned off the light. And, as if nothing had happened, she began to leave, and meanwhile, the book lay right on the table. Instantly, as soon as Flossus left, the book activated. Unknown magical symbols appeared on its pages. Let's return to the events that took place in Leo's room. He told her about the methods of paired cultivation, to which the girl noted in a whisper that this significantly speeds up progress. Through the practice of breathing and harmonizing solar and lunar energy, a man and woman can achieve yin-yang balance, opening energy channels to speed up the process and enhance its effectiveness. The girl began to get nervous and asked if this was the basis of cultivation and if something more was required. The hero was a little surprised, but said that if she doesn't want to, then that's okay too. The girl approached Leo again. She pressed herself against him and cried out that she agreed. Ariana hugged the guy tightly and said that she was ready to do everything to make Leo stronger. The guy reciprocated her feelings, although she was embarrassed by what was happening. But she really liked this feeling, and she did not want to let him out of her arms. It seemed that they could stand like that for days, enjoying the hugs and the view of the moon. Suddenly, the girl looked straight into Leo's eyes and wondered if they could. Unfortunately for her, the guy disappointed her by answering that he didn't. The lady objected, citing the need to practice breathing the sun and moon. Unfortunately, Leo had a very intense training session today, and he decided to start it all tomorrow evening, because tomorrow they were going to go to the Lake of the Sun and Moon. A new day dawned, and events continued at the academy. The students listened to a lecture about magic wands, which are used to transmit magical power when casting spells. Usually magic wands are made of wood. For example, pear sticks are used when working with evil and ancient spirits. They have protective properties against negative magic. Rob raised his hand to ask a question about what to do if fire magic was used. Alder, known as firewood, is often used as a material for making wands, and it can be said that alder is the most effective of the wood species. Ariana also wanted to know if she needs to change her wands if she owns the magic of fire and wind, because she uses different elements. This question also worried the other students, since each of them only owned one magic. The teacher ignored the question, as if he had not heard it. After which, he turned his gaze back to the class and found himself confused, not knowing what to answer. At first, he thought about it, realizing that it was necessary to give at least some answer. The teacher turned his attention to Leo, who was sitting with his eyes closed at his desk. Unsure of his answer, the teacher called Leo. Having said that, Leo was already familiar with the basics of magic. He needed help answering this question. The guy wasn't even embarrassed and was ready to answer it. Ariana suddenly screamed that Leo was already there. She stood up from her seat, but Leo immediately took her hand to stop her. He then politely asked her to return to her seat. The girl was upset and began to show emotional disturbance as she witnessed Leo being bullied. Some students sat at their desks and spoke disparagingly towards Leo, creating an unpleasant environment. Leo and Ariana tried to remain calm without entering into conflict with the instigators. Leo asked the question with a hint of disappointment, wondering if Will and Rob intended to use such ridicule as grounds for his expulsion from the school. Will continued to display disrespectful behavior, causing confusion around him, although he was surprised that Leo had turned to him for advice. Calmly, Leo also noted that if he told his father everything that was happening, he was afraid that he would not only be expelled, but that his father might take more serious measures. The writers were clearly annoyed, as they did not expect to hear such an answer. But Leo asked them to calm down, saying that he was not going to reveal anything. Will turned red as a tomato and declared that he was not afraid of anything. The teacher tried to calm the conflict and asked them not to quarrel anymore in class. After he asked for order to be maintained, the lesson continued. Sometime after the end of classes, students began to leave the academy. Rob and Will noticed people they didn't expect to see here and now. Among them was Will's father and another stranger. Will's father, Earl Rufus, had the same blue hair as his son. Will was thrilled to meet his father because it was quite unexpected. Suddenly, the Count turned his attention to Leo, who was calmly waiting outside the academy. The Count's attendant noticed his interest in the guy. The man approached Leo and said that the Count would like to meet him. Leo was clearly surprised by such an unexpected request. Count Rufus, meanwhile, watched and waited for the guy to approach him. Rufus and Leo boarded the carriage, accompanied by the Count's guards. Meanwhile, the Count's son approached another man and began to express his indignation. Suddenly, he pressed himself against him, which stunned the man. Will shouted in despair, blaming himself for what was happening. Leo and Rufus sat opposite each other and exchanged glances. The Count announced that after the end of the annual competition, he intended to buy several more estates in other cities. Rufus believed that in his current situation, owning more estates would be the best choice. The Count did not yet know that Leo now owned Kun, and he intended to tell him about it. Before he could finish speaking, Leo's father intervened, confidently rejecting the possibility that his son could become a magician, but still, he loved him like a father. He stressed the importance of Leo becoming a war hero in dangerous lands to achieve high social status. Leo, mockingly, told his father that it didn't matter to him whether his father was setting him up somewhere or just testing his character, since he had something to say. Despite his inability to awaken magical power since childhood, he was not going to give up, and therefore voluntarily gave up everything that belonged to him. Boldly and confidently looking at his father, Leo firmly stated that this was his final decision. He continued to emphasize his determination and gave up everything that belonged to him. This struck the father to the core, and he could hardly accept what his son said. Leo looked at Rufus with confidence, not wanting to give in to him in his beliefs. Count Rufus became thoughtful, lost in his own thoughts. After some time, he realized that Leo really did resemble his late wife. Leo never knew his mother, and he wondered what she was like. At this time, Will was indignant, considering this to be incredibly rude to him. He was the young master of the Rufus family and couldn't understand how a simple guy dared to oppose him. Unperturbed, Leo got out of the carriage, leaving them behind him. Will immediately began to make his claims, screaming and demanding an explanation of what he and his father had discussed and what Leo was holding in his hands. Leo had a large scroll, making Will and the others curious. Deciding to tease Will, Leo asked him if he had any idea what was written there. Calmly continuing his way, Leo left, not paying attention to the insults of Will, who shouted behind him, accusing him of all mortal sins. Will was clearly furious, his face expressing intense displeasure and anger. In the evening hours, in the vicinity of the Magic Academy on the mountain, an interesting process began to unfold. Leo and Ariana found an exceptionally picturesque place near a river and among the mountains to perform rituals related to breathing. The young lovers concentrated so hard because meditation together could strengthen their spirit and make them stronger. During the meditation process, they spoke words in a language unknown to most. At this moment, magic surrounded them, and their aura was filled with magical abilities. Little by little, their magical abilities increased through joint practice and meditation. Ariana's magic level was significantly higher than Leo's because she trained hard and reached level 131 thanks to Kun, while Leo had only 20. Suddenly, girl became hard. She could no longer continue to meditate and improve her abilities. Leo noticed her discomfort and immediately stopped her meditation. Her magic level continued to rise rapidly and reached 135. Ariana was having difficulty increasing her level further, and it seemed like she didn't want to continue. At first, Leo simply touched her to support her. He then helped her to her feet to cheer her up. Gently, he held her close to him to reassure her. Their magical auras of water and fire merged as they embraced. Surprisingly, their magical power continued to grow when they were in an embrace, and Ariana's level reached 138, while Leo's was already 50. Together, they were able to achieve much greater success than if they trained separately. However, Ariana couldn't continue any longer and told Leo that she was tired. In this case, the guy suggested that she go home. She hugged him tightly because she didn't want to go home. She wanted to be with him. From fatigue, Ariana began to fall asleep, standing while Leo hugged her. When the girl fell asleep, a magical lady suddenly appeared and helped Leo in his training. Even though she only increased her magical power level by 7 points, it was the result of months of hard work, and the guy shouldn't worry and everything would be fine. She was just tired, the magical girl said. Leo gently placed her on the ground and gave her the opportunity to rest, while she put a lot of effort into achieving such improvement. The great lady congratulated him and noted that many masters cannot raise their level for years, but he managed it in a few days. The guy decided to demonstrate his skills and show how well he now controls his magic. Gradually, he managed to concentrate and, using the power of thought, control the drops of water that hovered above his palm. This was a stunning achievement for him, as he had never experienced anything like this before. But of course, he wanted to achieve much more. Suddenly, he created a huge waterspout of incredible power and released it straight towards the river. Even the lady was surprised, as she did not expect him to master such skills so quickly. The water column was gigantic and required incredible magical abilities. Leo also learned how to crystallize water and create sharp crystals from it. There were a huge number of them, and they could hit an enemy and get stuck in his body in just a matter of seconds. With just a wave of his hand, he could create incredible things. By focusing his magic, he could create many sharp ice blocks aimed at just one target. With his new abilities, he could aim all the ice blocks at a single target and hit it accurately. The girl and Leo were amazed, as this was truly impressive for a person who had only been using magic for 2 days. At this rate, he will soon reach the second stage of cultivation. There's not a single student in the academy now whose magical power exceeds level 150, which is the second level, and even Ariana has this figure of 138. The magic lady noticed that with her current physical capabilities, merging the sun and moon could only be practiced once a week. Otherwise, she would exhaust her body and mind, which could negatively affect the relationship, and they also did not have a magical core. Leo learned that the academy had given away all the magic cores it had been saving for several years, and now it was only releasing 3 cores per month, which was not enough. Unfortunately, for now he was not allowed to practice further. The unusual girl replied that there is always a way out of difficult situations. Surprised, the guy asked what she was offering. The heroes could go into the wild magical gorge to continue their magical practice. This gorge was located in the region of the western mountains of another world, where the desert area was almost deserted, and usually only low-level monsters lived there, but sometimes mid-level ones could be found. Since the gorge was located far from residential settlements, it had virtually no impact on the human world. The Magicians Association did not send any security forces there. However, a barrier was installed that did not allow magicians whose level was below the second stage to pass through. Magic cores were extracted from level 1 monsters. But if you had basic skills, defeating a level 1 monster was not particularly difficult. The smart guy quickly realized that with a second level core, his progress would be much faster. The lady warned him against fighting higher level monsters. She also stressed that if he risks his life, he should not expect help. The guy nodded silently, understanding the importance of her warning. Meanwhile, the days passed, and events unfolded in Higer's house. Ariana was resting in the bedroom, and her sleep was incredibly deep after yesterday's meditation. Suddenly, someone approached the bedroom door. It turned out to be a girl with bright red hair approaching the door. She knocked on the door and waited for an answer. Then she waited for someone to open the door. So she waited for an answer from within. Without waiting for an answer, she tried to turn the doorknob to enter. However, the door was still locked and she was unable to enter. With effort, she was finally able to open the door and made her way inside the bedroom. Looking at the sleeping girl, she thought about how to wake her up. She firmly told Ariana that it was time to get up, otherwise she would be late. Ariana instantly opened her eyes and looked around at what was around her. Yawning, she said that everything went very well yesterday. But when she realized where she was shocked to find herself at home. The lady with red hair used her magical powers on Ariana. She pulled the blanket off her so that the girl would get out of bed. Ariana asked displeasedly, if she is not at home, then where is she? Without showing it, Ariana thought about how to respond. The lady with red hair noticed the open windows. She turned her attention to Ariana and asked why she slept with the windows open. Trying to come up with something, the girl tried to find an answer to her question. With shame, she replied that she simply forgot to close the windows. The woman with red hair continued to look at her indignantly. Her expression seemed to give her a new thought. She turned her attention back to the lady and asked how her magical power could increase, and she was interested in how this happened. At this time, events were taking place in the Magic Academy, namely in the library. Flossus was holding a book of black magic in her hands. The cover was turned down so that no one could find out what kind of book it was. The woman asked the left one if he really wanted to go to the Wild Magic Gorge. The guy confirmed his intentions since he would like to get an entry-level magic core. The Academy had produced a significant number of cores in recent years, but he still could not assimilate them. The woman knew that he was giving them to Ariana and asked if he wanted to give her even more kernels. The hero responded skeptically, since he himself would like to learn them. Flossus was shocked to realize that he had awakened. To demonstrate his words, the guy began to use his magical abilities right in the library. He made the water from the cup float in the air. All the water from the cup began to float in the air, obeying Leo's magical abilities. Looking into his eyes, she realized that he had already mastered level 1 water magic. However, he came to her asking for help. In response, the guy asked if she was interested in how he woke up. The woman replied indifferently that she was not at all interested. She thought about how much he wanted to tell it, but she wasn't the least bit interested. The hero felt awkward because he could not understand why this did not arouse her interest. He wanted to go to the gorge to obtain magic cores and become stronger, but this method was unfavorable since he had only reached level 1, and even the weakest level 1 monster could be a difficult opponent for him. After the woman's words, the guy thought about what was said. He took the kettle that was on the fire. Politely, he poured hot water into her cup. He casually added that he understood, but he had plans to get a mid-level core. Flossus was in shock and began to shake. Her hand shook as the guy poured water into the cup. After some time, events unfolded in the mountains behind the academy. Leo trained with his new sword, a gift from his father. Flossus began training him, ordering him to improve his physical strength and select martial techniques for cultivation. Ariana, for example, diligently trained her whip technique, and over the years of her efforts, her strength reached the second stage. Leo's magical power was just beginning to awaken. Therefore, Leo decided to study water flow sword cultivation, as it was his best choice. The guy made a decision and began training to improve his sword skills. He trained hard, combining physical exercise with the magical properties of water magic to improve his sword fighting skills. The water flow sword, like water, had the ability to take on different forms, requiring flexibility, agility, speed, and mastery of control. When he started his training, he found it difficult to change the shape of his sword using water magic. Through constant effort, his skill became better with each attack. The deeper his understanding of water magic, the greater the chance of creating the perfect sword. After all, if there is water, then there is a sword, and the sword and water are united. Steadily continuing to study the basics of magic and swordsmanship, he became more and more skilled. Even all the nearby animals in the forest gathered to watch him wield the sword. Sometime later, events took place in the men's dormitory of the academy. Ariana walked down the corridor, heading to Leo's room. As she approached his door, she began knocking on it. She came to bring him breakfast and surprise him. However, no one answered the door since Leo was not at home. The lady pressed against the door, trying to hear what was happening inside and find out if the guy was there. Suddenly, a stranger approached the girl and asked what she was doing here. Ariana was seized with panic. She didn't even know what to answer the man since she was not here legally. This was the director of the academy, the wizard Higer, and also Ariana's father. The girl could not understand what to say to him in response and was somehow at a loss. The man was unhappy with her behavior and believed that her mother spoiled her too much, since she had clearly forgotten about the rules. Perspiration ran down the girl's face, and she could barely tell that she was 18 years old. The man objected and said that she was already 18 years old. However, she still has not overcome the second stage. Her magical power was significantly higher than that of other students, and she was just a little away from achieving the second stage. The father couldn't find anything else to add and closed his eyes. Then he turned and started to walk away. The man continued to walk away, and the girl just looked after him. Suddenly, he stopped and asked why she was standing there and asked her to follow him. The girl did not fully understand what was required of him, but agreed. She hurried after her father, perplexed. They went together to the office of the wizard Higer. Ariana and Higer entered the spacious office so that the director could talk with her. The director seriously asked to what level her magical power had increased, and with awkwardness, the girl answered that her indicator was 138. Higer was surprised how she managed to achieve such results so quickly. Ariana was outraged because he had just reproached her for her slow progress. The man began to look in his office for something unusual that was lying on one of the shelves. When he found what he needed, he reached out his hand to take it. The girl continued to watch what was happening, but did not yet understand what was happening. Entry-level magic cores from the academy were considered average. The father gave his daughter a mid-level core, and one such core increases magical power by 20 points, which helps her break through to the second stage. Surprised and grateful for her father's kindness, the girl was happy. She gladly accepted such a valuable gift. After all, these cores were very effective and valuable in this world. Smiling, the daughter asked her father for a couple more mid-level cores. Hager got angry at this request and said that even one was enough for her, and that she would have to deal with the cultivation on her own. The man pointed to the door to the girl, hinting that it was time for her to leave. Holding the mid-level core to her chest, she said that if he was angry with her, then let him be angry to the end, and she added that it seemed that he had begun menopause. The father watched his daughter leave the office with a valuable crystal. Following her, he said that she was already 18 after the test competition, and at the end of the year, her engagement to Rob would be discussed. The girl was unhappy because she only loved Leo. Leo returned from training and slowly approached the academy. He was already almost at the entrance. He only had a few minutes left to get to the right office. He deftly jumped over stones and rocks, overcoming ponds and obstacles. Thanks to his physical strength and training, this was easy for him. Jumping several meters was an easy task for him. Suddenly, he noticed something unusual on the ground. All of a sudden, he felt danger. The enemies threw a magic net at him to immobilize him. Not knowing what was happening, Leo stood rooted to the spot, unable to do anything. The net covered him. From the weight of the magical threads, he fell to the ground and felt pain. Enemies approached to capture him. The villains rejoiced because the operation was unsuccessful, and no matter what status he had or what skills he possessed, he could not free himself from the network woven by magic silk. Leo was indignant and said that it was time for the enemies to get tired of their games. They behaved like children. These words only amused Rob, and he began to adjust his monocle. Both scoundrels considered their actions to be completely serious and justified. They refused to consider themselves children. Using magic, they lifted Leo into the air and tied him to a tree. They thought it was funny and assured him that he would live today, at which point they laughed loudly. They thought it would be funny if he hung here for a few days, and they might release him after a while. There were no monsters in the area around the academy, but beasts might appear at night, so Leo had to be careful. The villains left, leaving Leo alone, tied to a tree in nets. They didn't feel any pity, they just laughed. Suddenly, Leo began to use his magical abilities. The villains heard something behind them, which surprised them a little. They turned to see what was happening. It was Leo who freed himself from the net and stood with a sword in his hands. Rob was shocked because no one had been able to cut a silkworm's net before. Leo dealt with this easily, as he was learning a new sword technique using magic. Will immediately realized that this was an unusual sword, and it was not by chance that it fell into Leo's hands. He felt angry when he learned that his father had given him this sword. I don't deny it, Leo added that his father called him the precious heritage of the Lofus family. With a smile, the guy also said that he did not need this sword, but his father insisted, because a father's love is difficult to reject. He remembered how he and his father sat in the carriage. And the Count noticed that Leo was becoming more and more like his mother. Then he handed him a bundle with a snake sword. If Leo becomes a magician, then this sword will become his weapon. If not, then he should ask Flossus for the technique of wielding a sword, since simply wielding it is also good. The guy accepted his father's gift without hesitation, taking it into his own hands. When he opened the package, he saw a sword of incredible beauty, which had an unusual shape. Very angry, as he always wanted to be his father's favorite. In anger, he demanded that the sword be given to him, considering it his own. Rob realized that this was impossible. Even with this sword, he could not cut the net. Leo just smiled in response to the words of the self-confident villain. Swinging his sword again, he continued to cut the silk threads woven by the silkworm. Jumping incredibly high, he prepared to attack. Using magical powers and a sword, he proposed what-ifs. He mastered the sword technique and struck sharply at his opponents. Rob ordered to be careful and was going to use his magic. Using fire, he created a shield to protect himself from sword attacks. Leo had greater agility and was ahead of them, creating a water shield with which he dodged the fiery attack. After another swing of the sword, something was destroyed. The thing that shattered left many small blue fragments. The villain stood in front of them, completely paralyzed. Rob panicked because he didn't know how to continue fighting such an opponent. Will stood there, dazed, sweat running down his face, and he was incredibly excited. This was due to the injury to Will's pride, because Leo's sword was pointed directly at the villain's face. The villain was shaking with fear, not knowing what to say to such a serious threat. Suddenly, something started leaking from Will's pants. It became more and more abundant, and a small puddle had already formed under his feet. The guy was so scared that he began to urinate, thinking that death was now awaiting him. Leo found the situation very funny, not expecting such a reaction. He couldn't hold back his laughter any longer. He began to laugh loudly, and he found it hard to believe that this had happened. Despite the seriousness of the threat he carried in words, Will's reaction seemed too funny to Leo. Will began to hate Leo even more after this. Rob began applaud to him. It was incredible, because in just a few days, the loser learned to fight back. Leo countered, saying that his opponent was also incredible for not even trying to use magic against him. Rob decided it was just a waste of time as he didn't want to kill Leo at the moment. The outraged guy asked why Rob didn't kill him right now, because he always wanted to. The villain simply laughed at his words again. He despised Leo, but it was unprofitable to kill him now, and it was better to humiliate him in competitions and show Ariana who the real hero is. This answer amused Leo, and he said that he would keep an eye on it in the competition. He began to walk away towards the academy, not paying attention to Leo. Night fell, and in the academy dorms, events unfolded in Leo's room. The hero was meditating again, bubbles of water around him, and he was completely focused on strengthening his skills. With every second, he felt his magical abilities strengthening. He could control them so exquisitely that he created incredible figures out of water. The magical girl said that without the magical Kun core, it is impossible to increase strength. Only breathing techniques can help Leo. The persistent guy began to summon the power of water. His abilities improved to the point that he was able to create spheres of water. He masterfully controlled the water flows around him. The magic lady couldn't understand what he was up to. It was written in the book that in order to fully reveal your abilities in battle, you need to become one with them. Magic depends on you and the method. To control magic, you first need to learn to control yourself. He skillfully controlled water flows, dividing them into small particles. With incredible precision, he controlled the flows, directing them with light movements of his hands. Suddenly happened something unexpected. The guy began to be pierced by incredible pain that appeared out of nowhere. He began to cough in pain, not understanding what was happening. After a few seconds, he couldn't even breathe and began to choke. The magic lady immediately rushed to his aid, realizing that this could be dangerous. She was getting closer and closer, asking him to stop to prevent danger. The guy felt like he almost lost control and wanted to continue. The magical lady could not stop him and simply watched what was happening. The guy seemed to be starting to be torn apart, gradually and gently. Realizing the situation, the girl used her magic wand to cast magic on Leo and save him. The hero continued to experience pain but did not want to stop. The lady tried to stop him by waving her magic wand to help him stop. She ended up having to use magic, pointing it directly at Leo's head. Leo suddenly froze, sweat running down his face, and it was incredibly difficult for him to finish the meditation and break out of the state in which he had been put, and he looked at the rod as if possessed. After a moment, he felt relief and felt much better. Progress must move gradually and should not be accelerated. It is important to remain in control, otherwise it can damage both body and soul. Leo felt disappointed, realizing that his kun was still weak. Apparently, he will have to go into the Wild Gorge a little earlier than he planned. Sometime later, events continued at the academy. Once again, the students gathered for a lesson with the teacher. Ariana was tormented by the thought that Leo couldn't just disappear without a word. How could he skip class without notifying her in advance? Suddenly, the teacher called Ariana to the board, and he asked her to answer the question he had just asked. The girl didn't even remember what question was asked, because all her thoughts were occupied by Leo. Meanwhile, events unfolded in the vicinity of the academy. Leo studied the map, trying to figure out how to navigate it. However, when he got to the indicated place, there was nothing there. Sighing heavily, he realized that he needed to fold the map and continue to look for the path on his own. Noticing something next to him, Leo began to move forward. Suddenly, green eyes appeared behind him, watching him like prey. It was a wolf-like creature that carefully watched its prey. Watching Leo, the wolf prepared to attack, wanting to kill him in order to eat. Saliva flowed from the wolf's mouth, and he craved flesh, Leo's flesh. Slowly, the predator approached its prey, trying to be invisible. Leo sensed danger and turned around sharply. As soon as he turned his head, the wolf immediately rushed at him. The giant predatory animal was ready to tear Leo to pieces and was within striking distance.